Hello. Sweet. Welcome, everybody, to the MP&E Mentor Workshop or SSL Workshop. I'm John. I'm John Tan.
Hi, John Tan.
Nice to meet you guys. Yeah, let's just jump right into it. Duality. So the first thing that I advise anybody to do whenever they're working with anything new is to read the manual. I have a link in this PowerPoint presentation I can send out to you guys, but it's also just the first thing on Google when you search SSL Duality manual. So just if you have any trouble with that, you know, hit up the mentors, read the manual. That's a great resource. Cool. So a little overview of this board, this SSL board. It's called the Duality because it's an analog console and also a DAW controller. So there's two sides of it that you can use. And even the analog console part of it, there's digital routing within it that sort of blends analog and digital together in a really flexible way. So the other thing about this is that this is a center address console. We'll go more into that in a bit. Basically, that just means that everything is addressed in the center here, in the center section. A little more information, it's an evolution of the XL9000K series, which is pretty cool, and it's got flexible signal routing. So, the first thing we're going to focus on is this focus mode. And this focus mode changes the board from a DAW controller into an analog console. And it's that two arrow opposite pointing button over here, circled in red multiple times, in case anybody missed that. And it's, if you guys want to get up and see this button on the board, when you're in analog mode, this should light up blue. And then when you're in DAW controller mode, this should not light up. Oh shoot. So yeah, we're gonna mainly focus on the analog console mode, which is when it's lit up blue. So yeah, let's go into it. So firstly, here's an overview of the channel strip. These are channel strips on the presentation. The first thing on the very top of the channel strip is the channel input. That controls your mic input over there. And then you can see there's an LED indicator for phantom power. And it's probably important to note, if you guys are writing notes or whatever, that there is no phantom power switch on the channel. Like I said, it's a center address channel, so a lot of things are addressed in the middle here. And we'll get into that in a bit. So there's your mic input level, your phantom switch LED, your phantom power LED indicator. It also has an option to become a high impedance input if you hit the high impedance button there. Right below it is a pad, and then there's this cool like sort of drive feature right below the input knob that sort of emulates a 9K harmonic mic distortion thing. And a lot of people think that turning it to the left means less drive and turning it to the right means more. It's not really about that. It's about second order harmonics versus third order harmonics. And you engage that with the driving button. And then right below that is a phase switch, phase invert switch, a filter at input switch that sort of puts the filters on the channel right after the inputs, after the mic input. And then a channel trim. So you can trim channel after the mic preamp going into the channel. Or trim level after the mic preamp going into the channel.
If you can go back if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Is there no way to adjust the drive level? You can only change like second level.
The drive level is correspondent to how much input you give it.
Okay.
So, good question. All right, below the channel input. By the way, feel free to just like look at the channel strips if any of you are interested. Below the channel input are the dynamics section, or is the dynamics section. You have a compressor and a gate here, and to turn that on, it's a dynamic in button here, and then you'll see on the screen it lights up dynamic in the path. And actually, there's a lot of things that will be signified on this screen, so pay attention to the screen. So yeah, compressor and gate controls I really won't go into. It's kind of self-explanatory. Yeah, that's the dynamic section. Then you have the EQ and filter, also self-explanatory. I'm not really going to explain the controls. Yeah, it's just EQ in, and then there's a couple buttons to route where the EQ is within the channel strip. Oh, just before you go. And then below that is the Q and FX sends. Think of these as auxes. The Q would be a stereo aux, and then FX would be a mono aux. And then finally we get the pan, and then obviously below that is the fader. The panning, there's a couple different things for a 5-1 system, which is why you see this LFE and front and rear pan and LR and LCR. Ignore those. We don't have a 5-1 system in anywhere, I think, except for the dub stage or whatever, which does not have an SSL. So let's talk more about center address interfacing. So the main way you're going to get around this console is by going into something called select mode. And to do that, you hit these plus and minus buttons in the center section, which actually is in the next slide here. You see those two plus and minus, or minus and plus buttons? That's right here. You hit them at the same time, and that toggles select mode. And then what you do is, say I want to turn on Phantom on channel 24. There's a select button on the fader, right at the bottom there. So I select that. Sorry. Select that, and then hit plus 48 on top here, and that's your phantom power. And now you can see that there's a red indicator for phantom power on the channel strip. I'm going to go back a little bit. There's also a couple other ways to select things. All of them involve still going into select mode, plus and minus. If you want to select non-sequential channels, you hit select right below it. And then you select, say, all these different channels non-sequentially. And now I can apply phantom power to all of these at the same time. Or I could switch them into different modes or whatever within the center section. So that's a way to select non-sequential channels. A way to select sequential channels is, again, I'm going to repeat this, hit the plus and minus button, and say I want to select 20 to 30. So I'm selected on 20 right now. And then I hit this 2 button, and then I select 30, which is right here. And now I can sequentially select these and do whatever I want to them. And then the last one is select all. And by the way, to clear selections, there's a clear button right here. So again, I'm going to press minus and plus, select, and then hit all. And now it's selected everything on the board. I love the SSL for this. It saves so much time doing, like, just selecting everything and then pushing one button. But also there's some drawbacks to it. Not everyone loves it. I like it. Cool. Monitoring. So, so let's start with obvious. The big blue knob with the dim and cut buttons is your monitor level. Dim will dim by however much this dim is set to, and the way you set that is these misc levels things buttons in that section connected to this knob. If I want to set my dim to -20, I hit this dim in the miscellaneous levels. It'll highlight it green, and then I rotate the knob encoder here to -20. And now my dim level is set to -20. Same thing with your AFL level, same thing with your PFL level. AFL is after fader, PFL is pre-fader. SIF is solo in front, which is a mix of solo and your monitoring bus, the solo bus and your monitoring bus. HP is your headphone level. There's a headphone jack right here. That's controlling your headphone level. And then mini is the level of your alternate speakers. Speaking of alternate speakers, there's the LS Select, which selects alternate speakers. The confusing thing is, if you have nothing selected, that's the main speakers that you're going to be listening to. And then, I forget which order Tech has it routed, but Mini A is like the ATC, or sorry, that's the mains here. Mini A would be like the NS10s, and then Mini B would be like the Oratones, although I kind of forget the order. Same thing as Studio 3. Cool. Sorry. And the phones right there, you can, again, controls this headphone jack, and it controls what you're monitoring. You can either monitor what you're monitoring on the board, you can monitor foldbacks, or you can cut it. And then this is pretty important, the monitor source. There's a couple options. We'll ignore some for now. But external B is where you find iPod and Mac. I'm sure you guys knew that. And to do that, you go into the external B menu and find iPod or Mac. And then select monitor source, external B here. That'll light up. And then you're listening to the iPod or Mac. If you want to listen internally, or actually, I think these are in the next slides. Yeah. So now, external B would be your iPod or Mac. That would be your monitor source. And then if you want to listen internally, you select Mix A or Stereo Mix. Mix A is equivalent to like, well, there's a Stereo A on the API and then Mix +1, 2 on the Neve. That's the equivalent. There's Mix A, B, and C on this SSL. And it's maybe you should note that there's only a Mix A monitor button, and you're not able to monitor Mix B or Mix C sort of by themselves. But a way to get around this, if you want to hear Mix B and C, say for example I want to like send my talkbacks to Mix B, so I don't print a board mix with talkbacks. Then I'd use the stereo mix monitor here, and up here in this module, the stereo mix module, you select Mix A, Mix B, Mix C, and turn up the level, and that would be monitoring your stereo mix.
Wait, if you
Yeah.
want just like Mix A, you'd only select Mix A, right? And then you wouldn't have Mix B and C.
Yeah, so I
You
could.
want to send it, right?
Yeah, so I could monitor my Mix A just directly here. There's this red Mix A button. Or I could monitor the stereo mix and just assign Mix A to stereo mix.
Does the level only control, like, let's say I'm sending both like A and B. If I wanted to control those levels individually in terms of like the send, would I have to do that somewhere else, or is
You would have to do that somewhere else. That's a good question. So, and I'm going to go into that in a bit. Any other questions? Feel free to stop me, whatever. Cool. Okay, another important thing is metering. You have this meters menu up here, also up there. This is directly from the manual, actually. And pretty much VU is really kind of the only one I pay attention to. That toggles these VU meters right here, and that toggles it between your monitor, your stereo mix, your Mix A, and your solo bus. Or, sorry, not your solo bus. Not your solo bus. Your monitor mix, your stereo mix, and Mix A.
If you just keep hitting the VU button.
Yeah, if you just keep hitting it, you see how these light up.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why that would be useful is maybe you want to see the view of like an external or something. If I'm in Mix A, I'm not going to see the view of my external, because that's only view for Mix A, which is an internal stereo bus. So if I hit monitor, that's whatever I'm monitoring. You see the VU meters for that. Yeah, peak, hold, clear, all that kind of stuff you don't really need to know. So, but the analog and the DAW meters actually might be important. Right now it's set to analog, and that's sort of the default, which is the meters will show what's happening on the board, and then DAW will DAW will show meters coming from Pro Tools actually, which is handy sometimes. There's a couple different solo modes. Let's see, where are they? Yeah. The default is AFL, after fader listen, so we can control the solo bus, whatever feeds the solo bus with the fader. There's also pre-fader listen, and then solo in front. Again, that's the mix-in solo thing, so you can mix in your solo bus with your monitor or whatever you're monitoring.
So basically, you just hear like one thing and everything's just like kind of quiet.
Yeah, kind of quiet. Yeah, and there's a knob to control that level. I've never really used it, so yeah. All the others kind of esoteric. Don't really need to know. Sweet. So getting signal into the channel ends. So on the API, there's a mic preamp in that you patch your tie line into, and then on the Neve, there's a mic or line in preamp that you patch your tie line into. On the SSL, it's called channel in, and that's the only way to get signal into the channel. So right here we have a 57. Where's the 57? Sweet. We have a 57 patched into the mic tie line 1 over there. What I'm doing is I'm just patching mic tie line 1 into channel in 24, which has phantom power on right now, which it shouldn't. And then after that, all the routing is handled on the board. So the way I think most people will want to work is in inline mode, and that's confusing on the SSL. Or sorry, let me just... Everyone clear on inline mode versus split mode and everything? Cool. So we have inline meaning channel path and monitor path are in one channel. And then split mode is channel path is on one side and monitor path is on the other. So most people will want to work in inline mode, and that's confusing on the SSL because in order to switch to inline mode, there's something called a split button. So you hit the split button to go to inline mode, and again, it's a center address console. So again, hit plus and minus to select whatever channels you want. I'm going to select all of them. And actually, this is important. These are all set to monitor path right now. You have to make sure that you're in channel path first before you hit the split button.
So I can't see.
Yeah, and the way you hit, the way you change these to channel path versus monitor path is this channel in mic versus line. Mic is channel path, line is monitor path. So change these to mic first, and then hit split, and that should be working. Oh. There we go. The other thing is this channel output should be set to pre-fader. We'll go into that in a little bit. And then split mode will be engaged. So now you can see that the monitor and the channel path on the screen are next to each other. That's an indicator that you're in inline mode, which is split on the SSL. So there's a couple ways to do that. I just hit all and selected this split in the center section. There's also a split button right next to the panning that will configure this sort of mode on a channel by channel basis. So, cool. So now we get into the signal flow at all. We have our mic going into channel 24 in right now. And that's feeding the mic preamp. And then you can see on the screens that I have my channel path, which is input. And then right below it, there's an insert, dynamic, EQ, and filter indicator, but they're all off right now because I have no processing. And then there's this thing called channel output. This channel output is normal to Pro Tools here. So it's sort of the equivalent of hitting the direct switch, but it's already engaged. So I just go to my Pro Tools input, go to 24 because it's in channel 24 right now. And the channel output will now go to my Pro Tools input, which is normal through the HDX interface. This channel output can be repositioned. Again, I'm going to hit select. And I can move my channel output in the center section there with the channel output buttons. I can move it to channel input, which means there will be no processing before the channel output because the input just feeds the output directly. And the cool thing that SSL does is it moves all of the processing to the monitor path now. So you can process and not print things. So you select one channel, and then you go to the middle here and hit input. Or pre-fade or post-fade. Again, everything is center address. Cool. Split. Now in split mode, which is inline mode again, you also have the option of doing pre-fade, which will put the processing in the channel path. I mean, everything's not engaged right now, so it's not going to be printing. But once I engage everything, it'll print. And then you don't have processing on the monitor path if you have a pre-fade. And then there's post-fade, but there's only one fader on this board. There's no large versus small fader. So if you want a post-fade send to the channel output, can't really do that without this being in channel path. So we'll talk about post-fade in side-by-side mode. I like to call that split mode, side-by-side mode. We'll talk about that in a bit. But the two channel outputs you can have are input or pre-fade in inline mode or split mode. Inline mode. Cool. So yeah, everything's going to my channel input right now. You see the input as the first part of the chain. And I'm going to adjust my mic level. Check, check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check, 1, 2. And you see the meter's moving, so that means I'm getting signal, which is good. And in this case, I'm not going to do anything with the drive. I'm not going to do anything with the trim. Yeah?
The filter to input, does that mean like the filter will be like before or after?
So it means that the filter will be the first thing in the chain.
So filter and then the input?
Sorry, no. So it's input first, mic input first. Then the filter will be the first thing to process.
Gotcha. But then normally it isn't?
Normally it's not. Normally it's with the EQ.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is what? 1, 2, third in the chain right now?
I mean, it just depends on how you set it up.
Yeah, it depends on how you set it up, but by default it's third in the chain.
Do you have to hit that one, or can you not do it in the center?
You can do it in the center.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just happy to be there kind of.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. This phase flip is a channel path phase flip, so you can't monitor a phase flip. You have to print it in inline mode. Yeah. It kind of sucks. Yeah. So now I have signal going into here, and now it's feeding the channel out, going to Pro Tools. I'm going to record enable. No. Also set my channel out to 24 because it's inline. I'm going to record enable. Okay, cool. And I see signal in Pro Tools. Now I'm not hearing it because I have to assign it on the console. So the way to do that is, again, select mode, plus and minus buttons. I'm going to clear my selection here. Plus and minus buttons. Select channel 24. And now I'm going to assign that to mix bus A. Just make sure this is down first. And I do that by using the central busing matrix. And you see mix A, mix B, mix C. And I make sure that's on now because it's lit up on channel 24. It says mix A. So now I know it's going to mix A. Now I have to raise the fader for mix A. And it's sort of confusing the way you do this. You see there's this mix busing matrix. What you'd have to do is you'd have to hold down the button corresponding to mix A, which is on the bottom, and then hit the fader button, and that lights up red for mix A. Now I see that this fader is controlling the master for mix A. Let me make sure the level's up a bit. Check, 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 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Oh, and then I gotta raise both faders. Check, check. Check, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Now you can hear yourself. So, yeah, that's pretty much the workflow for inline mode. Anybody have questions? No? Cool. Alright, let's go to side-by-side. I'm going to zero out this console, show you how to do this. Woo! Yeah. Sorry.
Well,
No, you're good, it's fine. Something like that. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Side-by-side mode. What we call split mode normally, but this is confusing, so we can call it side-by-side mode. What we're going to do is we're going to select one half of the board. Again, plus minus. We're going to select 1, and then hit 2. Oh, whoops. Select 1, hit 2, go to 24. That selects my left side of the board. I'm going to put that in the channel path by hitting mic in the middle. So now my left side is set to channel path. I'm going to set my right side to channel path. Do the same thing. Plus minus. Select 25 to the end. And put that in monitor path. And I do that by pressing line. It's already in monitor path, which is cool. And then I just make sure my Pro Tools I/O is set right. So now I can't monitor, I can monitor my channel path, but I would want to monitor my monitor path, whatever is coming out of Pro Tools. And to do that, I'm going to set the I/O to 24 in, and then I'm going to monitor the return on 25. Cool. You want to... So, that's a good question. That recording light shows whatever is going in, is whatever is happening in the DAW. So I have this track armed, and it's track number 1.
Oh, gotcha.
And if I turn this off, that's not blinking anymore.
Cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, side-by-side mode. Was this the one right after? Yeah. Okay, cool. So the advantage of side-by-side mode, I love doing this, is that you can do a mix on your small faders, and then just have everything at 0 on your monitor path. I mean, you'd be printing it, but I would like to do that, printing and then have everything at 0, and it sounds awesome. The other advantage of side-by-side mode is there's processing in both the monitor path and the channel path, and then there's also the input flip on the monitor path and the channel path. Typically, you'd want to monitor the monitor path, so I have all the right side channels, which are monitor path right now, selected. I'm going to put that in mix A and make sure the fader's up, which is good. And then I'm monitoring my stereo mix. Mix A is pressed. Cool. Yeah. So now I'm monitoring everything in my monitor path. I can monitor things in my channel path, but it's not the Pro Tools return. It's whatever is going to Pro Tools. That makes sense to everybody? Cool. Let's go back one more. The other thing you have to watch out for while you're in side-by-side mode is that this channel output which is the signal feeding Pro Tools, on the channel path side, is post fader. And this is what I was talking about. You can put your channel output to input. Now this fader isn't controlling your level 2 Pro Tools. It's just mic input straight to the Pro Tools end. Then you can do pre-fader. Then you have all the processing in, but the fader's still not controlling your level going to Pro Tools. Then you can do post-fader. Now your level is being controlled by the fader. And then you have this last thing called EFX, which is kind of esoteric. You don't really have to know it. So just make sure that most or all, that all of your channel path faders are set to post fader if you want to print your fader mix going into Pro Tools. Cool. Is that it? Yeah. So watch out for that. That's something that could be pretty frustrating. Can anybody answer where my channel output should be for the monitor path?
Should be post, right?
Why?
Because if you had it then if it was pre-fader, then that little fader wouldn't control the level of Pro Tools.
For my monitor path.
Oh. Not bad. So you would be the question again?
Where would my channel output have to be for my monitor path?
Oh, it would be 25 then if you have it to 25. Is that what you're talking about? Like a Pro
No. I'm talking about channel output here, which is the signal, or sorry, which is the output of the channel going to Pro Tools.
I see the board.
Yeah.
Ugh. I don't want to stand from the camera.
Well, if it helps, this is a trick question.
Oh, I was baited. Gotcha.
I baited you.
Damn.
Doesn't matter where the channel output is because you're not outputting this to Pro Tools.
Oh.
Right. So channel output is linked to Pro Tools in.
So this is just got it. So that's just for you, just from Pro Tools to return. Wait, so is that this monitor is what Pro Tools coming in, right?
This is the Pro Tools return. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
Ah.
So channel output doesn't matter.
Gotcha.
Unless you want to patch channel output to somewhere.
Okay.
Then.
And
Yeah.
that would all still just be in your monitor path at that point. It would be.
Yeah, it would be in your monitor path. Exactly. Cool.
So I wanted to patch the channel output to like an Aviom for like the pre-fader stuff like on the mic on the left side instead of the right side. Whatever you do it through the channel output, and therefore the switch in the middle would matter.
Say that one more time.
So like if I want to just send if I want to monitor on this side, right? But
Yeah.
I want to have like whatever I'm like monitoring affecting what's going on in like the Avioms.
Sure.
I go from this side, right? So then would that be related to the channel?
Well,
output?
what I would do is I would take the HDIO out, or sorry, not the HDIO, the HDX out, which is Pro Tools out, and just patch that into Avioms.
Oh, okay.
And it's half normaled, so it'll still get to the board and the Avioms.
Gotcha.
And that way, whatever's coming out of Pro Tools is just going straight to their headphones. So if you change anything in your channel path, they're going to hear it.
Gotcha.
But if you change anything in your monitor path, then they won't.
Gotcha.
Cool. Next thing we're going to talk about is foldbacks. Foldbacks are pretty much like cues on the Neve. It's just sort of this master, the center section that controls a lot of things actually. In our Berklee studios, Foldback A is normal to Q1, and then sometimes there's a Q2. I think in Studio 3 there's a Q2. That's normal to Foldback B. What you can do with the Foldbacks is you can source different things into them. So you can see on the right here, well, on the top, firstly, there's a high frequency and low frequency boost and cut, just for Foldbacks. Then you can source a bunch of things. First thing is your stereo monitor, whatever you're monitoring here, can go to your Foldbacks, which is normal, again, to Q1, meaning that if you plug a Redco in, then they'll be able to hear the stereo, or whatever you're monitoring in the stereo bus. Or you can monitor external B in Foldback. Then there's a Mix 1 knob that you can source Mix A from, or QA from, and that knob is the level control for both of them. Then there's Mix 2, which is the stereo mix, or QB. And then there's a master cut, and the AFL is a solo, after fader listen. And then your master level. Cool. More about foldbacks. They are the main way you get talkback to people. In Studio 3, there's nothing normal to the studio loudspeakers, the SLS. So what I typically end up doing is I patch foldback B, left, right, to SLS in, left, right. Then I use my foldback B talkback button to be a live room talkback in the speakers. Or sometimes I'm playing music for the setup team, and I source the external from the iPod, from my Mac, and I'll be playing stuff on my Mac that'll go into SLS. Obviously turn up the level. Cool. And then these talkback switches on the bottom are kind of self-explanatory. There's talkback all, which is everything. Foldback A is the talkback to foldback A, foldback B, and then there's an external talkback. I never really end up using that. There's an external talkback patch point over there. That's if you have like a producer in the back that has a 57 or something that wants to use a talkback switch. And then there's a listen button. There's you can see there's a listen volume. In Studio 3, there's a microphone in the live room in the ceiling somewhere. And if you just hold this or press this listen button, you can hear that microphone in your monitoring in the control room. And then everything is controlled by the master trims. There's the listen volume, talkback out volume, and then talkback to foldback, which is what you want to pay attention to. Even if the foldbacks are all the way down, this talkback to foldback will be up, so your talkback will still work. So yeah. Cool, now we get into cues and effects. So they are on each channel strip. There's two stereo effect sends, two stereo cues that you can use one at a time on each channel. And then 4 mono effect sends. And the cool thing about this is that the stereo cues are pre-fader, they're normal pre-fader, and the effect sends are post-fader, which makes sense to me because these stereo cues would be feeding headphones. I don't want the fader changing their headphone mix. And then the FX sends would be for reverbs or delays or whatever, and I would want like my vocal, like if I'm automating it to go more into the reverb, just to be controlled with my fader. So yeah, just think about it as auxes. These are all auxes, pretty much. The cues are just stereo and the effects are mono. Yeah, so the way you turn them on is you push these knobs. It's the green one in every case. And then you get a little light saying that it's on. Now my stereo A is on. And the cool thing about these stereo cues is that the panning, you don't have to turn on a pan or anything or blink them. The panning, there's a notch right in the middle. So you don't have to turn on pan whenever you pan anything on the SSL. It's just you move it right or move it left. And then you notch it in the middle if it's in the middle. So same thing with these stereo cues. You turn on your stereo cues by hitting the green knob. FX, you turn on by hitting the green knob again. If you want to change your stereo cue from stereo cue A to stereo cue B, you have to hold down this thing called set EFX/QB right on the bottom left there. Hold that button down and then press the green knob again. And then that will toggle between QA, QB. Then there's a source select. Say I do want my cues, my stereo cues to be post fader. I'm gonna hold down this source select button and then press on the green knob on the stereo cue. Now it's post. And then same thing with the FX ends, except instead of post and pre, this toggles something called channel output. you don't have to worry about that. That's sort of a mixing workflow. We're not really going to worry about that for recording. Cool. Is that true? Or sorry, you might have to worry about that for recording. Channel output is wherever your channel output is. So if it's post fader on your channel path, then your FX send is post fader. But if it's pre fader on your channel path or monitor path, then your FX send is pre fader. It's wherever your channel output is. Is that confusing?
So if you set it the channel output mode, that'll depend on whatever you set it in the middle.
Exactly.
But if you just don't keep it on channel output, you'd be fine, kind of thing.
If you don't keep it on channel output, it's just post fader.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if you want to be quirky and have it pre fader, then you'd have like channel output, and then you'd also have to set everything up.
Then you'd have to set the channel output to be
Gotcha.
pre fader. Yeah. Cool. Alright, now we get to stereo return. Say I want to patch reverb, right? Let's patch reverb. What I'll do is I'll take, usually it's a mono thing that I'm going into a reverb, so I'm going to take my FX1 out. Where is that? Sorry. Yeah, FX sends 1. I'm going to go into the left channel of the M7, which is the Berklee. Take my left-right Berklee out, and then patch it into the stereo returns, which on the patch bay are labeled as echo returns. And then I'm going to go to my Berklee, make sure it's mono in, stereo out, and that the mono in is my left channel. And I'm going to turn up and on, well, I'm going to turn on my FX send 1 first by pressing the button, and then turn up the level. Oops. Make sure that the FX master in the center section is up, and then I'm going to use my stereo return. And the way I do that is I have to first assign it to my mix bus. And assign mix bus to monitor. Yeah. So the way you assign stereo returns to mix bus is very confusing. It's kind of stupid. You have to be in select mode, which again is plus and minus. Then you hold down, you tap you hold down the AFL select button on the stereo return, and then you press mix A. Now that's assigned to mix A. Now I can hear my Berklee going into my stereo return. And everyone's familiar with the concept of stereo returns. It's just like 2 mono faders panned left, right, but it's just in the middle.
It keeps you from having to use your channel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a couple controls on it. It's pretty self-explanatory. Left-right balance, mono versus full stereo width. The mix A, mix B, mix C indicators will tell you what mix bus they're assigned to. And then this level going to foldback A and foldback B can control your level to cues. So say you're using a Redco and you want them to hear reverb. I'd select a foldback A probably, and turn up the level. And then they'd be hearing reverb. Cool. Yeah, I think that's it for this. Now we're going to go into some more advanced things. Does anybody have any questions before we do that? Signal flow wise, routing wise, printing, whatever. Cool. Cool. So, the cool thing about the SSL is you can group some faders. This is really handy when I have a bunch of faders for Talkback, and I just want to like mute them or unmute them whenever they're playing, so on and so forth. The way I do that is, again, I'm going to go to my select mode, which is what buttons?
Select, plus and minus.
Plus and minus. Say my talkbacks are 25 through 30. I'll select 25 to 30. and then say I want to use group 8. So now I'm going to go to this group 8 fader and press group, which is where the select button is on a normal channel fader. Now you see there's lights on these faders that say group 8. Now I can use this. Oh, looks like the motors are not working, except for one. That's the other thing with this board too, it's kind of funky. People don't really take care of it too well, which sucks because it's really an amazing workflow. So say I want 19 to 24 instead, see if these motors work. Hey, there you go. And sometimes it's sort of funky, you just have to adjust them all to 0, the same level, and just use your group fader then. Then I get out of select mode, and now I don't run the risk of selecting more things to the group. Cool. Next slide. Total recall. So now I've grouped things, I've changed the state of this console. Everyone know Kieran Deshaw? Kieran Deshaw? He went in the SSL and he created templates to help you guys. Now, it's important that you guys don't rely on these templates, but it can help with just setting everything up and also tearing everything down. Now that the modes are changed, there's like lights. I'm going to select more things to maybe turn on cues, FX, whatever. Some of this. Turn on phantom power somewhere. Right? Okay, now it's fucked up. So now I want to zero the console. What I'm going to do is, there's this middle screen in the center. It's kind of hard to see if you're back there, but here, I'll even bring the camera. There's this middle screen in the center. And what you go, if you want to use a total recall thing, you would have to go to the button that corresponds to SSL, right here, and go to the project button here. Everybody see that? And then make sure in something called all templates, and you select that by hitting that select button. Then you go to TR, which stands for total recall, and there's all these templates for split channel, monitor on QA. The 3 that you have to think about are 0, split console, and where's the side by side? Sometimes the tech team also moves these around, which is why you shouldn't rely on them. Let's see. All templates. Okay, I think they got rid of the side by side mode. But there's this split console, which is inline, and then this 0. Now everything's messed up. I hit this 0, I select it here, and then I hit this button called Set All twice. Now all my faders went down, all of the switches went off. Now all I have to worry about is the knobs for zeroing the console and stuff. So I'm gonna put this camera back. And then in Studio 3, there's also templates for an inline workflow and then a side-by-side workflow. But again, don't rely on these templates to normal or set things up, because the knobs you still have to worry about. Just as long as you're keeping those in mind, it could be helpful. And then to exit, I'm just going to hit that SSL button again. And that's total recall. Okay, last thing is, one of the last things, right? Maybe not last thing. Busing. So there's 24 multi-track buses on the SSL, and they are not correspondent to your channel output, meaning they are not correspondent to Pro Tools in whatever, 1 to 24. They're just a separate output on the board. So the way I choose something to go through buses, say I want, say I'm in side-by-side mode, my channel path's here, and I have a kick in and a kick out mic. I want to bus them together for a single kick track. So I'm going to select these two channels, 25, 26, which is what buttons?
Plus minus.
Plus minus. Select 25. Select 25, 26. Using the channel path. Now I'm going to go to the busing matrix here, which is where you set your stereo buses and also your multi-track buses, and just hit 1. Now you see 1's lit up, and I'm going to take the bus output here, 1, and then patch it into Pro Tools input, something like that.
Can you monitor bus 1 on the console?
That's a good question. Yes. There's AFL buttons right next to these bus masters that you can solo.
Busmaster?
Yes.
No, where?
Oh, right here.
The black
Ah,
ones.
gotcha.
Yeah. I never really do that. What I find is more useful for busing is you can set the input of a channel to be the corresponding bus. So say I want to bus my drums to 25, 26 here. I'm gonna set the input here to bus. Now you see this says bus, and say all my drums are on 19 to 24. Now I'm going to select 25, 26 here. 25. Oh shoot, there's no 25, 26. Sorry, let's do it this other way. Select line, no, mic. Okay, so I want to bus everything to 23, 24. So I select 23, 24, get this bus input, and I select 25 through 28, something like that. 25 to, and then I hit 23 and 24. Now, these are going to channels 23, 24.
Just because you've selected them when you're in select mode?
Yes, because I selected them and assigned them to buses 23 and 24. And then my bus input is here. And then my channel out is still feeding Pro Tools. So I can print all my drums through 23, 24. Use an insert on 23, 24 to compress everything. Yeah.
Can you just like do that again
Sure.
while I'm standing up here?
Sure. One sec. Yes. Sorry. So that's normal everything. Go to my template. Select and all. Cool. So all my drum bus on 23, 24. Say all my drums are 25, 50, something like that. Actually, I believe bus 1 will correspond to channel 1 and 25, and so on and so forth. I'm not exactly sure about that. But anyways, I want all of my drums here in channel path. Oops. Channel path, sure. And then I'm going to bus them to 23 in the center here, and also 24. And since it's a stereo bus, I'm going to hit Panda track. That makes these 23 and 24 a stereo bus. So these pan knobs will affect if it's going to 23, 24, and how much.
Where's the Panda bus button?
It's right next to this busing matrix.
Gotcha.
It's called Panda track.
Oh, gotcha.
Then I'm going to select 23, 24. And then make that a bus input. Now, everything here should be feeding 23, 24. never really found a use for that, except for like bus processing sometimes when I'm mixing, whatever. It's sort of more advanced thing, but it's good to know. We're good on top. Yeah, I think that's it, right? Is that the last thing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, anybody have any questions? I feel like that was a lot of information. Yeah.
Can you send the presentation so that if we ever happen to have time to be free, we can like
Sure.
practice that?
Yes. I'll find a way to do that.
Thank you.
I will find a way to do that. I'll probably send it out to some professors and
Okay.
maybe
I think
they'll have
our
one.
names should be in the form.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever is easiest.
Right.
I have a question about like the effect sends.
Yeah.
The one above. So you said like these ones are the Q stereos.
Yeah.
You only use
So the
one
top
at a time,
ones,
right?
yeah, exactly. You can use either QA or QB one at a time.
Gotcha. So if I when I send it, it'll automatically be stereo. So let's say if I have like for some reason I want all my drums on QA. So
Yeah.
I basically just first of all turn them on. Actually, when we fancy QB, hit this button and you hit this one.
Yeah.
Right? So
And then now that's QB.
this is the pan knob, and so now it's like turn up the levels, kick drum, and then it's
Yep.
snare, pan, blah blah blah.
Exactly.
Okay, sweet. That's all.
And then, yeah, that's a good way of using the stereo cue. Then, like say I want to create a drum cue, I just take QA out of this patch bay into the Avioms,
Gotcha.
or QB out, whatever.
Would that affect your talkback if you had like? Oh no, because then you your foldback, you'd be like on.
So your cue is different from your foldback.
Oh, okay.
Your cue is auxes,
Oh, okay.
and then your foldback is your cue. It's kind of confusing.
Okay. So, your foldbacks are your cues, and your cues are your auxes.
Well, your stereo cue is a stereo aux.
It's a stereo. Okay.
Yeah.
It's two auxes. Got it.
Right.
So then, if let's say like talkback's on foldback B, right?
Mhm.
I could still use QB. I just want to have to make sure whatever if I have stuff on there, the foldback that I'm using for the talkback isn't feeding whatever cue I'm using for.
So you just have to make sure that you're not sourcing QB on foldback B.
Yeah. So then I can QA. So then if I can't, so whatever I'm using, basically like the cues where I can't use for this thing.
Say that one more time?
If I'm using a cue for like let's say like Avioms and whatever, right?
Okay.
I can't use that for talkback to source it.
You can. So
I can.
again, your foldbacks are different from your cues. You can take your cue out into your Avioms, and that's not going to foldback B unless I source it.
Gosh. Oh, okay.
So they're separate, but they can feed into each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I could source it, but I don't have to.
You don't have to
probably,
source
Probably
it.
don't want to.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Exactly.
See.
Another thing to note, actually, is in Studio 3, the Talkback button for Foldback A,
Discard.
yeah, it's called Discard. And that's because the tech team couldn't find a Foldback A button.
It's cool one.
It's called Discard. But, I mean, it's in the same position, like, you'll realize. Yeah.
Nice.
Any more questions?
Or we can do like a hands-on thing.
Yeah,
for all
hands-on
of us.
thing. Anyone want to try to get some signal going into the board and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm gonna